learners, welcome to today's session. Today we are going to continue with the discussion which we were having on employment trends among tribals in India. In the last session we discussed magnitude and pattern of labour force and the major occupations in which the tribal community is generally engaged. In this session we will continue with the discussion, and the first area which we will discuss is sector-wise employment. The general employment pattern in India reveals that the problem of underemployment exists with a large magnitude than the open employment, and the approximate data sets show that there is decline in the employment growth from 2.82%, which was in 1980s, to 1.50%, which was in 2010. Similarly, the employment structure in the three sectors, namely agriculture, industry and service sectors, reveals a considerable decline in agriculture and a slight increase in the industrial sector, and a remarkable increase in the service industries. The nature of employment growth in the recent past highlights the increasing casualization. Majority of the tribals are employed at the lower level because of their poor technical and educational qualifications. Similarly, in railways and postal departments, considerable employment opportunities have been given to tribals at the lower levels. The distribution of tribals in the unorganized sector is not sufficiently described in any of the data sets. However, several qualitative micro-studies highlight the problem of tribals in the urban areas. More than half of the tribal populations working in the primary and tertiary sectors are from the scheduled population, and the number of persons belonging to the scheduled tribes who are employed in public sector undertaking is rather small compared to their share in the population. The lower representation of these workers in class 1 and class 2 positions is attributed mainly to their low educational attainment, and workers from scheduled tribes, scheduled castes and minorities are predominantly engaged in labour market as casual labourers. Some are self-employed in agriculture and small manufacturers as well as traders. And proportion of regularly employed workers is as low as 6.9% among scheduled tribes and little more than 7.7% among scheduled caste, OBCs and minorities. As against this, proportion of regularly employed persons is approximately 11% among others. Approximately 48% of scheduled caste workers are engaged in labour market as casual labourers. In addition, wages paid to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are significantly lower than the wages paid to the other categories. The wage differentials across social groups are more pronounced for regular workers than for the casual workers, and for male workers than for female workers. Now let us discuss development programs and employment. Unemployment was not seen as a major problem in the beginning of the planned periods. Hence, a reasonable high rate of economic growth combined with an emphasis on the labour-intensive sectors like small-scale industries was envisaged to generate a reasonable employment as to employ productively the growing labour force. But during the mid-1970s, these expectations and assumptions have changed due to high rate of unemployment. Therefore, the official approach to the employment problem underwent a change. The fifth five-year plan sought to address the employment issue by reorienting the pattern of growth in the employment-intensive sectors. At the same time, a strong opinion was emerging to suggest that growth alone cannot solve the problem of poverty and unemployment. Therefore, a number of special employment and poverty alleviation programs have been launched. However, these schemes have not been exclusively meant for scheduled tribes. These schemes aim to provide additional or seasonal employment and also to supplement their income. Schemes such as minor irrigation, land reclamation and soil conservation are meant to provide new and seasonal employment. Schemes such as dairying, poultry and piggery are to provide additional employment and income. Public works programs such as rural road construction, building, etc. are offered as a source of employment during slack seasons. Then some of these schemes are supposed to ensure continuity of employment and income. Some other schemes are target group oriented. Small and marginal farmers, landless agricultural laborers and artisans, persons engaged in household occupations, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are the targeted populations. MFAL, SFDA, DPAP and CSRE are some of the schemes that are directed especially to the above mentioned groups and to use optimally existing skills and to provide job opportunities at different levels of skill is one of the major objectives of these schemes. Provisions of new openings for the skilled, semi-skilled and unskilled persons is sought through these schemes, and all these programs have been continued either in one or in other forms. Active labour market policies, that is ALMPS, are recognized as an important strategy for providing immediate access to employment for less advantaged groups in the labour market. In India, ALMPs are pursued to generate both wage as well as self-employment. The major employment generation programs which are currently in operation in India includes MNREGA, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, then Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program PMEGP, Swarn Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana SDSY and Swarn Jayanti Shahri Rozgar Yojana SDSY. So these programs have reflected immense potential for generating short-term rural wage employment as well as sustainable self-employment. Now let us discuss MNREGA. Recognizing the serious problem of unemployment, the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, that is NREGA, was enacted on 7/9/2005. NREGA, renamed as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, MNREGA, provides for the enhancement of livelihood security of the households in rural areas of the country by providing at least 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in every financial year to every household whose adult members volunteer to do unskilled manual work. Thus, MNREGA makes the government legally accountable for providing employment to those who ask for it and thereby goes beyond providing a social safety net towards guaranteeing the right to employment. A very significant feature of this act is that if a worker who has applied for work under MNREGA is not provided employment within 15 days from the date on which work is requested, then an unemployment allowance shall be payable by the state government at the rate prescribed in the Act. The scheme is working as a social safety net. It has prevented distress migration and helped in empowerment of women. At an all India level, 21.9% households were found to have benefited from MNREGA. According to the annual report of 2010 of Ministry of Labour and Employment, the following are noted as impact of MNREGA. First of all, employment opportunities and wage rates have made a significant impact in rural areas. Then secondly, increase in wage rate and number of work days in rural areas has increased the income of rural households. Increase in income has resulted in increase in ability of rural households to purchase food grains, other essential commodities and to access education and healthcare. About 46 lakh works have been taken up during 2009 and 10, and most of these, that is 67% of it, relate to water conservation. This has resulted in rise in water table in dry and arid regions as large number of water conservation and drought proofing works have been taken up under the MNREGA. And the fourth is financial inclusion. That is, more than 9 crore saving bank accounts in the banks and post offices have been opened for the MNREGA workers. Now let us discuss SGSY, that is Swarn Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana. And SDSY is a self-employment program for the rural poor. The objective of the SDSY is to bring the assisted Swarojgaris above the poverty line by providing them income generating assets through bank credit and government subsidy. The scheme is being implemented on a cost sharing basis between the center and states in the ratio of 75:25 for states other than northeastern states where it is 90:10. SDSY has provision for taking up special projects involving financial implications in the range of 1 crore to rupees 15 crore. Special projects have to be innovative and replicable in nature. Under the special projects, the focus is on placement linked skill development and marketing linkages. A special initiative has been taken up under SDSY to set up rural self-employment training institutes, that is RSETIs, one in each district of the country for skill development training of rural BPL youth to enable them to undertake micro enterprises and wage employment. Now let us talk about Swarn Jayanti Shahri Rozgar Yojana, that is SGSRY. SJSRY provides gainful employment to the urban unemployed and underemployed poor by encouraging the setting up of self-employment ventures by the urban poor and also by providing wage employment and utilizing their labor for construction of socially and economically useful public assets. The revamped SJSRY has 5 components. The first is the Urban Self-Employment Program, USEP, which targets individual urban poor for setting up of micro enterprises. Then the Urban Women Self-Help Program, UWSP, which targets urban poor women self-help groups for setting up of group enterprises and providing them assistance through a revolving fund for thrift and credit activities. The third is the skill training for employment promotion among urban poor, that is Step Up, which targets the urban poor for imparting quality training so as to enhance their employability for self-employment or better salaried employment. Then it's the Urban Wage Employment Program, UWEP, which seeks to assist the urban poor by utilizing their labor for the construction of socially and economically useful public assets in towns having population less than 5 lakh as per the 1991 census, and the Urban Community Development Network, UCDN, which seeks to assist the urban poor in organizing themselves into self-managed community structures so as to gain collective strength to address the issues of poverty facing them and participate in effective implementation of urban poverty alleviation programs. Now, let us talk about Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program, that is PMEGP. PMEGP is a credit-linked subsidy program for generation of employment opportunities through establishment of micro-enterprises in rural as well as urban areas. The specific objectives of the program are: first, to generate employment opportunities in rural as well as urban areas of the country through setting up of new self-employment ventures, projects or micro-enterprises. Secondly, it brings together widely dispersed traditional artisans, then rural and urban unemployed youth, and give them self-employment opportunities to the extent possible at their place. And thirdly, to provide continuous and sustainable employment to a large segment of traditional and prospective artisans and rural and urban unemployed youth in the country so as to help minimize distress migration of rural youth to urban areas. The workforce participation rate shown by the census and other data sets in India is high among scheduled tribes. Therefore, these enumerating agencies should carefully study the tribal phenomenon and present data sets for scientific understanding. Also, it is necessary to categorize the tribal labor such as self-employed and family labor in agricultural sector, non-agricultural sector, then employees in various sectors and government services. Poor educational infrastructure and poverty keep these vulnerable sections underdeveloped. And although some number of schools and schemes have been established and initiated to impart education to tribal children, their literacy rate is still lower than the scheduled castes. Therefore, there is an urgent need to revamp the system and address the root cause of the problems of the tribals. Education alone cannot solve the problem of unemployment in the present context. Therefore, the agencies which are already providing skill development training should reorient their programs for the tribal development through institutional trainings and supports. Assimilation without empowering the tribals is not fair. Otherwise, the tribals who had poor access to all the services cannot compete with advanced general population. Therefore, the socio-economic development programs should be properly implemented in the tribal areas. So with this, we come to the end of the session. Let us just summarize the unit. This session highlighted the tribal situation in India. It is noted that the tribal lot are left to live in impoverished conditions. The approaches adopted by the government for the tribal development have not really impacted the tribal communities. Then the employment pattern among tribals reveals that there is disguised employment than open employment. Although data set reveals higher work participation among tribals, the reality is that children, women and elderly are forced to work for their survival. Most of the tribal communities are still practicing their traditional occupations, which are not economically viable in the present conditions. Those with less education have been working in the organized sector at the lower level as their education is low, and a vast majority have been working as migrant workers in the unorganized sectors with poor working conditions and no social security measures. So hope this session is meaningful to you and you've been able to understand the entire employment pattern amongst tribals. Keep watching the videos. Till then, take care and bye.